Have you ever sat in front of a computer screen, trying to say a complete sentence in English, but everything feels stuck in your mind? The vocabulary you've learned, the grammar structures you've memorized, it all seems to vanish when you need to speak. Frustrating, isn't it? But imagine if you could think in English naturally. No need to translate each word in your head. No hesitation about whether your sentence is grammatically correct. You just speak, quickly, confidently, and fluently. Welcome to the English Learning Podcast. I'm Jason, and today I want to share with you a journey that anyone can take. The journey of training your mind to think in English. Now imagine this. Every time you want to speak English, instead of searching for vocabulary in your native language and then translating it, you simply think in English from the start. That feeling is amazing, right? And trust me, you can achieve that. In the next 30 minutes, I will guide you through everything you need to know to start thinking in English naturally. From creating an English-speaking environment around you, to specific techniques that help your brain function like a native speaker. And not only that, I'll share with you daily exercises that you can apply immediately to see noticeable improvements. If you've ever wondered, how can I think in English without translating every word? Then this video is just for you. And you know what? You absolutely can do it. The only thing you need is a bit of patience and the right approach. Let's explore how you can start thinking in English, feel more confident, and speak more fluently every day. Ready? Let's get started. I want to tell you a little story. Not long ago, I had a friend. Her name was Emily. Emily had been learning English since high school, and I have to say she was extremely hardworking. She memorized every vocabulary word, every grammar structure, every pronunciation rule meticulously. But there was something strange. When we spoke in English, she always took a long time to respond. Sometimes she would just stand there, her eyes staring into space, as if she was trying to piece everything together. When I asked Emily why she reacted so slowly, she admitted that in her mind, everything started in her native language. She had to translate every sentence, every word before speaking. It was like trying to run fast while still pressing the brakes. Emily's problem, and also the problem of many other English learners, is their way of thinking. Our brain works the fastest when it is not obstructed. But when you try to translate every word, every sentence from your native language into English, you're creating an invisible barrier that slows your brain down. Imagine you're talking to a close friend in your native language. Your words flow smoothly, naturally, without any barriers. That's because you are thinking directly in your own language. Everything flows in a natural stream, from thoughts and emotions to spoken words. But if you had to stop and translate each word, everything would become fragmented and awkward. That's exactly what Emily was experiencing. Your native language is like a well-trodden path, familiar, smooth, and easy to walk on. But English is a new path. And to walk down this new path smoothly, you need to learn how to leave the old path behind and step directly onto the new one. So when you start thinking in English, you're not just learning a language, you are changing the way your brain works. You are training it to respond naturally to English without the need for translation. And this is much more important than you might think. Because when you think in English, you're not just improving your speaking skills, you're also improving your reaction speed, your confidence, and even your listening comprehension. Everything becomes so much easier when you don't have to translate every word. Think about this. If a friend asks you, "What did you do yesterday?" and you have to translate that question into your native language, think about your answer in your native language and then translate it back into English. That process takes at least a few seconds. And in a normal conversation, those few seconds feel like an eternity. Can you imagine how amazing it would be if you didn't have to translate anymore? If English became the natural language in your thoughts, and trust me, that is completely possible, because you don't have to be a native speaker to think in English. You just need to practice the right way. So now, you understand why thinking in English is so important, but the bigger question is, how can you do it? Don't worry, I'll guide you step by step, and it's all very simple. Right after this, we will dive into the most important part, specific techniques to help you start thinking in English. Ready? Let's keep going. Learning English is like climbing a mountain. You want to reach the peak, the point where you can think in English as naturally as if it were your native language. But sometimes we don't realize that we are creating our own obstacles along the way. Today, I want to point out some common mistakes that I see many people make, even myself, during the process of learning English. And more importantly, I'll show you how to overcome them. This is the biggest and most common mistake. When you translate word by word from your native language to English, you're forcing your brain to do double the work. First, you think of the sentence in your native language. Then, you have to translate it into English. And this doesn't just waste time, it also makes you more prone to mistakes. Here's an example. If you want to say I have cold, and you translate word by word from your native language, you might say I have cold. But that sounds very strange to a native speaker, because in English we say, I am cold. You see, translating word by word doesn't always work. The lesson here is, instead of translating word by word, try to think about the entire sentence or phrase you want to say. Pay attention to how native speakers use the language, and start mimicking them. We'll discuss how to do that more thoroughly later. Another common mistake is focusing too much on creating a perfect sentence before speaking. I understand that everyone wants to speak with correct grammar. But the truth is, native speakers make grammar mistakes too. I remember the first time I spoke to a native friend. I kept worrying about whether my sentences were grammatically correct. As a result, I hesitated, stuttered, and the conversation became much more difficult. Grammar is important, but it's not everything. When you try to construct a perfect sentence in your mind before speaking, you're only slowing yourself down. Remember, communication is not about perfection, it's about connection. I see this happening a lot, and I truly understand it. The fear of making mistakes is completely natural, but if you let that fear control you, you will never progress. There was a time when I attended a seminar in English. I was really nervous because it was the first time I had to speak in front of a large group of people. And I made mistakes, a lot of mistakes. But the amazing thing was, everyone understood me. No one laughed. In fact, they encouraged me and helped me fix my errors. And I realized, mistakes are not the enemy. They are just small steps that help you grow. Remember, mistakes are a natural part of the learning process. Don't let them hold you back. Turn them into motivation to improve. One of the reasons many people struggle to think in English is they don't spend enough time living in the language. If English only appears during classes or when you're doing homework, it will always feel like something foreign. You need to create an environment where English becomes a natural part of your daily life. Listening to English music, watching movies without subtitles, reading books, writing in a journal, all of these things will help you feel more familiar with English. As you can see, all of these mistakes can be fixed. They are just small obstacles on your path to thinking naturally in English. And now, once you've recognized these mistakes, it's time to start making changes. In the next part, I will show you specific techniques and powerful tools to help you think in English. Are you ready? Let's move on. You see, learning a language isn't just about studying vocabulary, grammar, or pronunciation. It's about living with that language. To make English a natural part of your thinking, you need to surround yourself with English. Imagine you are creating a small world where English is the primary language. I remember when I first started learning English seriously. At that time, I thought studying from textbooks was enough. But then I realized, as soon as I closed the books, English completely disappeared from my life. I returned to my native language, to my old habits. And so, every time I went back to studying English, it felt like I had to start over from scratch. I realized that if I wanted to think in English, I needed to create an environment where English was always present, not just in textbooks, but in every aspect of my life. One of the simplest ways to create an English environment is listening. But not just listening when you're studying. Allow English to be present during your everyday activities. For example, every morning when I make coffee, I usually play an English podcast. I don't always understand everything, but that doesn't matter. What matters is, I'm allowing English to become a part of my daily life. And you know what? Even if you only understand half or even just a third, Your brain is still learning to get used to the sounds, the pronunciation, and the rhythm of English. I love reading, and when I decided to switch to reading in English, everything changed. Instead of just learning words from vocabulary lists, I learned them through interesting stories and emotionally rich articles. You don't need to read complicated academic books. Start with what you enjoy. If you love detective stories, try reading a short mystery novel. If you love cooking, read recipes in English. Let English become something enjoyable, not just a task. Another thing I realized is, writing in English helped me think in English more easily. When you write, you have time to choose words, build sentences, and gradually, everything becomes more natural. Try keeping a journal in English. It doesn't have to be long, just a few lines about what you did during the day or your thoughts. The important thing is, you are practicing. And finally, of course, speaking. You don't need a perfect practice partner. You can talk to yourself when cooking, when walking, or even when brushing your teeth. At first, I felt a bit strange, but then I realized that's how I could think in English without needing to translate. And gradually, it didn't feel weird anymore. Instead, I felt more natural and more confident. You see, creating an English environment around you isn't hard. It just requires a small change in your daily habits. Listen more, read more, write more, and speak more. But this is only the first step. Creating an English environment is important, but to truly think in English, you need the right methods. In the next part, I will show you powerful techniques that will help you make English the natural language in your thoughts. Let's explore together. Creating an English environment around you is already a great step forward, but if you want to think in English naturally, you need some special techniques. And today, I will share with you 6 techniques that have helped me and many others achieve this. The first technique is extremely simple, but incredibly effective. Look around you and name everything in English: table, chair, window, cup. And don't stop at just naming things. Try describing them. For example, you see a cup. Instead of just thinking cup, you can add details. This is a white cup. It's made of ceramic. It feels smooth and cool. When you include details like color, material, and how it feels to the touch, you are training your brain to think naturally in English. The lesson here is, don't just name things. Describe them, feel them, and create your own story with each object around you. This not only helps you expand your vocabulary, but also helps you visualize everything in English instead of translating word by word from your native language. Sounds strange, right? But I promise you, this is one of the best ways to practice, and the best part is, you always have the perfect practice partner yourself. Try talking to yourself about whatever you are doing. When you are cooking, you can describe the process. I'm chopping vegetables. The knife feels sharp. The tomatoes are juicy and red. Or when you are driving, the road is busy today. I need to turn left at the next intersection. The great thing about this is that you don't have to worry about making mistakes. No one can hear you. What matters is that you are practicing how to think in English without having to translate. Remember, every skill requires consistent practice, and talking to yourself is a fantastic way to start. This is a technique that completely changed the way I learned English. Instead of using a translation dictionary, I switched to using an English dictionary. For example, instead of translating the word excited into my native language, I read the definition, feeling very happy and enthusiastic. When you do this, you are forcing yourself to think in English and understand words the way native speakers do, instead of just finding an equivalent word in your own language. Using an English dictionary helps you form new concepts in English without needing to translate. And this is extremely important if you want to think directly in English. The small lesson here is, when you look up a new word, try to understand the definition in English. Don't rush to translate it. Instead, let English be the medium. A common mistake many learners make is trying to create complex sentences from the very beginning. That only makes you feel confused and easily discouraged. Start with simple sentences. For example, if you want to say, I need to go to the store because I need to buy some vegetables for dinner, you can begin with, I need vegetables. As you become more confident, your sentences will naturally become longer and more complex. But what matters most is that you build a solid foundation first. Remember, fluency doesn't come from perfect sentences. It comes from the natural flow of your thoughts, and sometimes simplicity is the shortest path to naturalness. Imagine that there's a small voice in your head that always thinks in English. Instead of thinking everything in your native language and then translating it, let that voice speak directly in English. For example, when you're planning your day, think, what should I do first? Maybe I'll start with breakfast. Or when you're reflecting on your emotions, I feel excited about today's meeting. This helps train your brain to think naturally in English without having to translate from another language. And when you do it often enough, English will become a natural part of your thoughts. All of these techniques will be much more effective if you constantly surround yourself with English. Listen to podcasts, watch movies without subtitles, read books, write in a journal. All of these activities will help you feel more familiar with English. Think of English as a small stream. If you only let it flow whenever you study vocabulary or grammar, it will dry up. But if you let it flow continuously through every aspect of your life, it will grow stronger each day. Now you know the important techniques to start thinking in English. But the bigger question is, how do you turn these techniques into daily habits? Don't worry, I'll show you exactly how in the next part. You already know the effective techniques to begin thinking in English. But to make it a natural habit, you need to practice every day. Just like any other skill, consistency and perseverance will determine your success. And the good news is, you don't need to spend hours every day, just a few minutes of proper practice, and you'll notice a significant change. Imagine this. You just woke up. The gentle morning light shines through the window. Instead of thinking in your native language about what you need to do, try speaking to yourself in English. Today is Monday. I have a meeting at 10 a.m. I will have lunch with my friend. In the evening, I'll read a book before sleeping. This simple action helps you start your day with your mind in English mode. It's like setting your brain to English mode right from the beginning of the day. And when night falls before going to sleep, summarize your day in English. You can either whisper to yourself or write it down. Today, I went to the supermarket. I bought some vegetables. Then I watched a movie. It was exciting. This is a great way to practice thinking in English in a pressure-free environment. And you'll be amazed at how much progress you make after just a short period. Here's a fun challenge that I think you'll enjoy. Spend at least 30 minutes each day, just 30 minutes challenging yourself not to translate anything. During that time, every thought you have must be in English. If you see a tree by the road, instead of thinking the tree, think tree. If you feel hungry, think, I am hungry. At first, you will find it a bit difficult, but that's completely normal. It's like when you start exercising after a long period of inactivity, your body will resist. But if you persist, everything will become much easier. The lesson here is, don't worry if you make mistakes. What matters most is that you are trying to think in English without translating. You know, this is one of my favorite exercises, just a few minutes a day. You can talk to yourself in English. For example, when you are preparing breakfast, say out loud what you are doing. I am making coffee. It smells so good, I will drink it while reading a book. Or when you are walking, you can talk about what you see. The sky is blue today. The air feels fresh. I can hear birds singing. The great thing about this is you don't need to be perfect. No one is listening to you. This is your own space to practice. And when you do this long enough, you'll find yourself thinking in English without forcing it. An interesting thing is, you don't need to set aside separate time for practice. You can integrate English into your simple daily activities. For example, when you're cooking, describe each step in English. When you're driving, talk about what you see on the road. When you're exercising, think about the movements you are performing. The key is to make English a natural part of your life. You don't have to wait until you sit down to study to use English. Let it be present at all times, everywhere. This is a great way to practice thinking in English while also improving your writing skills. Every day, take a few minutes to write down your thoughts in English. It can be anything: an interesting event you experienced, your feelings that day, or simply your plans for tomorrow. For example, Today was a busy day. I worked on my project and finished it. I felt proud of myself. Tomorrow I will start a new task. What matters is not that you write perfectly. What matters is that you write what you are thinking directly in English. Gradually, you will find yourself feeling much more confident. You see, all of these exercises are simple and easy to do. But if you truly apply them every day, you will see the difference. And now, you know the techniques and exercises needed to practice thinking in English. But I know, not everyone can stay persistent until the end. And that's why, in the next part, I'll share with you how to maintain motivation, overcome challenges, and make this journey more enjoyable. Let's explore together. You already have effective techniques and daily exercises to practice thinking in English. But I understand. Every journey comes with its own difficulties. And if you feel like things are getting too hard sometimes, that's completely normal. But don't worry, because today I will show you how to overcome the most common challenges English learners often face. And if you've ever felt stuck, just remember, I've been there too. This is a problem I see many people struggle with. And honestly, it's something that haunted me for a long time. When I first started learning English, I always thought in my native language first, then translated every word and sentence into English. And as a result, I always felt slow, awkward, and unnatural. One day, I decided to try something new. Instead of trying to translate everything, I started to simplify my thoughts. I stopped trying to form complex sentences in my head. Instead, I focused on expressing my ideas using short, simple sentences. For example, instead of trying to say, I need to go to the store because I need to buy some vegetables for dinner, I just thought simply, I need vegetables. Gradually, I realized the important thing is not perfection. It's naturalness. And once you feel comfortable with simple sentences, you'll find yourself expanding your sentences more naturally. So, if you're still stuck translating every word, try starting with short sentences. Feel the smoothness in your thoughts, and gradually, you'll find that everything becomes easier. One of the things that makes many people feel stuck is not knowing enough vocabulary. You want to say something, but in your mind, the necessary English words seem to completely disappear. I've experienced this too. Once, I wanted to describe a refrigerator, but I couldn't remember the word refrigerator. Instead of stopping, I tried to describe it using simpler words, a cold box where I keep food. That made me realize you don't need to know every word in English to express your ideas. What matters most is your ability to explain or describe things in a simple way. And sometimes, those efforts help you learn new words more naturally. Remember, if you don't know the right word, try describing it differently. Use simpler words, or find a way to explain it. This not only helps you speak more fluently, but also makes the learning process much more enjoyable. You may have experienced this feeling. You've been studying English every day, applying all the techniques, but still feel like you're not making progress. And that's when doubt starts to appear. I've been there too. There were times when I felt all my efforts weren't bringing results. But then I realized something very important. Progress is not always obvious. Sometimes you can't see progress every day, but that doesn't mean you're not improving. It's like when you work hard at exercising every day. You may not see changes immediately, but little by little, day by day, your body is getting stronger. To help myself see progress, I started keeping track of my learning journey. I wrote journals in English, recorded my voice, and occasionally reviewed what I had written or said from a few weeks before. And I was surprised to realize I had improved much more than I thought. The lesson here is, don't just focus on the present results. Keep a record of your journey and look back from time to time. You'll see that every day you are making progress, even if you don't always notice it. This is probably the biggest challenge many people face. The fear of making mistakes, the fear of being judged, the fear of being laughed at, all of these things hold you back from speaking English and trying new things. But let me tell you a little story. When I first started speaking English in front of a group of people, I made many mistakes. And yes, I felt embarrassed. But then I realized other people didn't care as much as I thought. They understood me. They even encouraged me to keep speaking. Mistakes are not the enemy. They are just small bricks that help you build your skills. And if you never make mistakes, it means you're not really trying. So instead of fearing mistakes, see them as part of the journey. Be confident to speak, be confident to think, be confident to practice, because every mistake brings a valuable lesson. You already know how to overcome the most common challenges. But this journey is not over yet, because the most important thing is how to maintain motivation and persistence throughout the learning process. In the next part, I will show you simple but effective ways to keep your motivation burning bright and to make your English learning journey enjoyable and inspiring. Let's keep going. You've come a long way. You've learned the basic techniques, practiced them every day, and overcome common challenges. But if you want to speed up your progress, if you want to think in English not only naturally but also fluently, then it's time to explore advanced techniques. These techniques will help you not only think in English, but also feel, imagine, and reason as flexibly as a native speaker. Did you know that one of the most effective ways to improve your ability to think in English is to mimic the speech of native speakers as soon as you hear it? This technique is called shadowing. It's when you listen to an English sentence and immediately try to repeat it with the same intonation, rhythm, and pronunciation. You don't have to understand everything. What matters is training your brain to get used to the natural way of speaking. For example, when you hear a conversation in a movie, try repeating it right away. Or when you hear a sentence in a podcast, try to repeat it as quickly as possible. The lesson from this technique is, it's not just about listening and understanding, but training your natural reflexes by mimicking native speakers. And when you do this enough, you'll find yourself starting to think in English more quickly and naturally. One of the biggest mistakes I used to make was trying to translate every word. But then I realized, native speakers don't think in individual words. They think in concepts, phrases, and ideas. For example, when a native speaker thinks about taking a walk in the park, they don't think of each separate word like go, walk, park. Instead, they think of the whole action as a unified concept. Instead of thinking, I need to go to the park and walk for exercise, you can focus on the general idea, walking in the park. When you learn to think in concepts, everything becomes faster and more natural. The lesson here is, don't try to memorize individual words. Focus on phrases, ideas, and broader concepts. This will help you think more coherently and fluently. If you've ever felt frustrated by trying to memorize vocabulary, then this technique is for you. Instead of trying to memorize a long list of words, learn them through context. This means learning new words through stories, conversations, or specific situations. For example, instead of trying to remember the word exhausted as a single isolated word, you learn it through a sentence. After a long day of work, I feel exhausted. When you learn words this way, you not only remember the word itself, but also how to use it in a specific context. The lesson from this technique is, context helps you remember vocabulary longer and understand how to use it naturally. And when you encounter that word again in different situations, you will recognize it more easily. This is an interesting technique I discovered when I wanted to improve my creative thinking in English. Instead of just thinking about words literally, try associating them with images, emotions, or metaphors. For example, if you learn the word persistent, you can imagine a stream of water that keeps flowing, even when it encounters rocks, never stopping. When you create vivid images in your mind, you not only remember the word better, but also feel its deeper meaning. The lesson here is, language is not just words. It's also emotions, images, and ideas. Let your imagination guide you, and you will find yourself thinking in English more freely and creatively. It may sound simple, but storytelling is one of the most effective ways to think fluently in English. Try imagining yourself telling a story in English. It could be a memorable experience, a movie you just watched, or even an ordinary day of yours. For example, when you tell a story, try to use descriptive sentences, express emotions, and convey your feelings. Yesterday, I went to a new cafe. The atmosphere was cozy, with soft music playing in the background. The coffee was rich and aromatic. It felt like a small escape from the busy world. The amazing thing is that storytelling not only helps you practice thinking in English, but also helps you expand your vocabulary and improve your expressive skills. You see, all of these techniques are aimed at helping you think in English naturally and fluently. They are not dry formulas, but rather vibrant tools that help you broaden your thinking. But the most important thing is not how many techniques you know, it's how you apply them in your daily life. And that's exactly what I will share with you in the next part. I will guide you on how to combine everything you have learned and turn them into a sustainable habit. Let's keep going. You have come a long way. You have learned how to create an English environment around you, apply effective techniques, build daily habits, and even learn how to overcome difficult challenges. But you know what? Every journey needs moments to pause, reflect, and look back on what you've accomplished. Now is the time to take a step back, look at the big picture, and recognize your progress. Because sometimes, when you are too focused on moving forward, you forget how far you've already come. Think about the early days when you first started this journey. Do you remember? Maybe back then, everything felt vague, difficult, and it seemed like there was no way to think in English without translating every word. But now, you have mastered techniques like shadowing, thinking in concepts, contextual learning, and even metaphorical thinking. You have learned how to use English dictionaries, talk to yourself, write journals in English, and create a small world where English is always present. The most wonderful thing is, you have made an effort to practice these techniques every single day. And even if you haven't seen dramatic changes yet, the fact that you have been consistent is already a great success. Take a moment to write down what you feel you have done well. Maybe it's the fact that you no longer translate every word when thinking in English. Or perhaps you have dared to speak English with others without feeling overly anxious. One of the best ways to see your progress is comparing who you are today with who you were a month ago. Open up the journal entries you've written, listen to the recordings you once made. You will realize that you have truly improved. For example, when I looked back at the first entries in my English journal, I saw grammar mistakes and awkward sentences. But instead of feeling embarrassed, I felt proud, because I could clearly see the progress I had made with each page. The sentences became smoother, more natural, and most importantly, I felt more confident. I want to share something I've learned from my own journey, and that is, don't wait for perfection. Celebrate the small steps you achieve. When you find yourself thinking in English more smoothly, even if it's just for a few short minutes, that's an achievement. When you find yourself writing a paragraph without having to stop and translate, that's also an achievement. And whenever you recognize that you've made progress, reward yourself a little. It could be a relaxing evening watching your favorite movie, or simply sitting back and enjoying the joy of your own improvement. But the most important thing after you evaluate and reflect is, you need to keep moving forward. Don't let small obstacles stop you. Don't let mistakes discourage you. Because every mistake is a lesson, and every lesson brings you closer to your goal. Keep applying the techniques you've learned, maintain the daily habits you've built, and don't be afraid to try new things. But above all, always remember, this journey is not a race. You don't need to go fast. What matters most is that you don't stop. You've done a great job, and I want you to truly feel that. But before we end, I want to share a little secret with you. Something that I believe will help you maintain your motivation and feel more inspired every day. Let's discover it together in the final part. You've reached the end of this video journey, and I want to take a moment to say, you are amazing. You have dedicated your time, patience, and determination to learn and improve yourself, and that deserves to be acknowledged. But as I said, this journey isn't over. In fact, it's only just beginning. Think about everything you've learned today, from creating an English environment around you, applying techniques like shadowing, thinking in concepts, contextual learning, to overcoming the common challenges that most learners face. You've learned how to make English a natural part of your thoughts. And now, I want you to do something simple, a small action that can make a big difference. Choose one technique that you find most interesting. Just one. And commit to practicing it every day for at least 1 week. For example, if you choose the shadowing technique, spend 5 minutes each day repeating a conversation you love. Or if you choose writing an English journal, write down your thoughts and feelings in English before going to bed. I want you to do this because I've been through this journey myself. I know that sometimes you will feel stuck. There will be days when you don't want to try anymore. But what truly matters is that you don't give up. You keep moving forward, step by step. Remember, there are no shortcuts to success, only persistence and constant effort, and you are doing that. And if you feel like this journey is too lonely, don't hesitate to share with me and everyone here. Leave a comment below. Talk about the technique you will apply. Or share the challenges you are facing. I am here to listen, to accompany you. You don't have to walk this path alone. We can learn from each other, motivate each other, and progress together. And if you find this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends who you think might need it, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss future videos. Because I have so much more to share with you. And I want to see you improve every day. Remember, thinking in English is not an innate skill. It's a journey, and you are on that journey, step by step, moving closer to your goal. Keep trying, keep moving forward, and I will always be here to walk this journey with you. Thank you for watching. I'm Jason, and I'll see you in the next video.